Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Marshall Hall. I am the manager of the chamber, for want of a better description. Thank you all for attending. There's more coming in. You'll have to forgive me. I'm acting as MC as well as watching the door. Thank you all for attending our education webinar. And I particularly want to thank Alfred, Karen, and Tyrone for being involved. I understand it's pronounced Tyrone, is it?
Yeah, Tyrone.
Tyrone. Okay. Now the format for today is I'll get Alfred. Each of the participants will be asked to speak for 5 to 10 minutes, just to outline what's happening in their sector of the education market, and the opportunities there are for business owners to upskill their staff, and also look at the what's going to happen in the future for the industry, which is an increasingly important part of the Gold Coast economy. And then after that, we'll open it up for Q&A. So with that, I'll invite Alfred to jump in and have a chat.
Okay, thank you, Marshall. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for taking the time to listen to a quick update. I could speak, I guess, all day about what's been happening over the last few months, but I'll keep it brief. The education sector, as we all would have seen and heard, has been hit extremely hard by COVID-19. And one of the things that we've seen on the coast is initially when it hit was, for us, was earlier in the year. And I guess the semester one had already begun, which meant that students were already here, luckily, already starting their studies. And we've seen a slow decline in students opting out of their studies and returning home, or finishing up their studies and returning home. We saw, I guess, the colleges associated with the universities and the English language sector hit the hardest, I guess, first up. And as time progresses and as visas come to an end, students are opting out slowly to return home, and when they can. Now, we've also seen some students that have been stuck here have reached out to us as Study Gold Coast for support. And one of the things that we've done is we've pivoted our business to an online format, like much of the sector has. We've rolled out our virtual student hub, supporting students, the welfare of students throughout the city. We've teamed up with the state government to offer support packages for those, and we've also funded 15 of our members the opportunity to supply support services to students in need. The other thing we did was we stood up a business panel, advisory panel, to support our members that are critically in need of good advice, particularly around, some of the ability to go online and some of the regulatory restrictions around that, also in tax and finance and other bits and pieces. So we saw 10 of our members pick that up, and we've slowly seen, I guess, some of those members adopting new practices in their businesses. We've also seen, I guess, as far as upskilling opportunities, our members really pivoting their businesses and offering unique examples of upskilling. And I'll let my colleagues talk a little bit more about what they have on offer, but I guess online learning is nothing new for the educational sector, and I guess the Gold Coast has led the way for many years. Particularly my time at TAFE Queensland, I know that they were actually responsible for leading the way in the development of online product, and Karen will talk a bit about that. I'm not sure if she's waving at me or chasing a fly away there. But I guess we've also seen the likes of, YouTube channels. If you saw in the news, Emma Drazy, one of the teachers here on the Gold Coast, has set up a YouTube channel to support students that are studying online. A couple of the things that we've been also focused on was what happens next. So our rebuild plans for the sector, as well as supporting our members to make sure we all get through this, is centered around a 3-stage plan. The first stage is to keep, I guess, in front of people's mind and as an option to study online. We've been lobbying the federal government to support visa flexibility around that. So trying to get trying to get the visas recognised, or let's go post-study work rights recognised under online study. So the time they spend studying online in their home country or offshore, that recognised, I guess, locally as part of their post-study work rights. And we're in a good position to bounce back from this. We've got regional status, which means students get an extra year of post-study work rights, and we also get priority visa processing. So that puts us, I guess, at the forefront of the recovery plans. So that's stage one. Stage two is partnering with prominent agents that have a substantial amount of students still here onshore, whether they're studying in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, wherever it may be, and looking at postgraduate markets as well as continuing students. Some students may not have the ability to travel back home, but they also may look to want to stay in Australia. It's a safe place, and with us on the Gold Coast embrace international education and international communities. So we're seeing that partnership and rolling out some unique offerings in that space will put us in a good position to then move to stage three, which will be focused on our international markets as they come available to really get into those markets and drive new business to the education providers. So I might park it there. As I said when I started, I could talk all day about plans and things that are popping out, and I might hand over back to you, Marshall, and then see where, if any questions evolve out of that.
Thank you. That was great. Now I'm going to pass it over to Tyrone. He's very privileged to have him here. For those who do not know, he is our Deputy Vice Chancellor, academic for USC, which is one of the 3 universities we are present on the Gold Coast. Thank you, Tyrone.
Thanks very much, Marshall, and thanks everyone for joining in today. Look, Alfred very eloquently sort of addressed some of the things that we're also doing at Southern Cross in direct response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I won't really go over that same territory because it's very much in common with our thinking and indeed I'm sure other universities and higher ed providers. I suppose I'd just like to offer a few reflections just so that you can understand the tone as much as anything else and our intention as we move through this. So clearly this is a really, really challenging set of circumstances, not just for education, but for a range of industries. But I just want to start by saying that despite the fact that we are going to have to make some really difficult decisions at Southern Cross, just like other universities, we're actually very optimistic that we are a very sustainable institution and we've learned some important lessons during this time that we're already applying to improve what we do in education and research. So I think we're going to, we're learning a lot, and I'm sure that your businesses are in the same sort of mode at the moment, learning new lessons, applying lessons in a very sort of agile manner. And so there has been some good to come out of this. And I think we will see that reflected in what we are able to deliver on the Gold Coast post-COVID. So you can expect to see from Southern Cross some really exciting expansion of what we do at our Coolangatta campus, but also in partnership with TAFE Queensland. Hugely important to us what we're doing in concert with our partners at the fantastic Coomera campus of TAFE Queensland in IT, music, digital media and so on. For us, the immediate challenge has been that we haven't been able to have students on campus. We flipped wholly online on March the 23rd, and we've made a decision that substantially for the rest of this year we'll be delivering our education online. And that's been necessary just for the sake of the preservation of the health and safety of students and staff. That said, the flip online has enabled us to address a broader audience than perhaps we would have traditionally. And one of the really interesting developments has been the increasing desire on the part of international students to either continue or commence their studies online prior to coming to the Gold Coast or coming to the university's physical campuses. And I think in the fullness of time, we will realise that that is quite a considerable opportunity for us. It'll give us an opportunity to engage a wider audience earlier, build deeper engagement, even remotely. One of the other things that you might have seen is that the Commonwealth, as part of the broader COVID response plan, has invested, not to a huge extent, but somewhat in education, in the sense of funding the creation of short courses. And Southern Cross has been one of the biggest responders to that. We've stood up 13 really concise short courses, wholly delivered online, that could be completed over the next 6 months, covering some of our real strengths: engineering, IT, education. Health is absolutely the centre of what we do as a university. But interestingly, even in a new field that we're developing in regenerative agriculture, which has had very, very considerable interest, and we think we're the only institution nationally that's in that space. For me, the really important lesson for the university is actually how quickly and effectively we've been able to change. And I suppose for our organisation, one of the things that we want to preserve post-COVID is exactly that spirit, but also to reflect that to a greater extent in our educational offerings. And one of those that we're really rethinking in particular at the moment, in light of things that we're learning, is our new business offer that we're launching next year, which will be very much imbued with the spirit of agility and change. So look, tough times. Our staff have done amazing things, and our student learning engagement has been higher than ever, surprisingly. So some good to come of it, but lots of work still to do. And very happy to take questions, Marshall, later on when it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll hand over now to Karen. Karen's the CEO of TAFE Queensland Gold Coast. And they've been actually a pioneer of the online learning process, and we were having a chat before we came on board about how they've been doing some, even the trades are doing online learning. It's been quite interesting to hear about that. All yours, Karen.
Thank you, Marshall, and thanks for the opportunity to say a few words. And I want to sort of look at both, I guess, the opportunities, upskilling opportunities, both for businesses and also for employees and individuals. So if I can start with SMEs. What we know during this crisis is that there's a number of skill gaps that have been identified, and I guess TAFE Queensland's working this space to try and bridge that gap. So we found that digital technology, data analysis have been two areas where business owners are needing more information, needing more skilling, being able to pivot and shift and change quickly. And I know Angie Bell touched on this last week. And the ability of businesses to be able to diversify and move quickly has been really important to their success. Managing cash flow, and I'll talk a little bit more about the opportunities that exist there, but a lot of businesses have come to our short courses to get some more information on managing their cash flow, and planning for business continuity has become a really important area for most businesses. So certainly at the moment, business owners, great opportunity to be building your own skills, but also great time to be building the skills of your staff. And I know a lot of individuals and businesses are taking this opportunity to do just that, because as Tyrone said, we've got university courses available. TAFE Queensland's got a whole suite of training programs available. There has never been a better time to be doing some of that upskilling and reskilling, and so great opportunities for people. So let me just let you know of a couple of them. So one, firstly, our business resilience webinars, and these are in 3 areas. They're fully funded. They go for about an hour, hour and a half. The first one, cash flow management, absolutely critical for businesses. There's one on the 8th and 12th of May. We still have spaces available, and it really helps people manage their cash flow in that sort of over the 13-week period. There's lots of practical resources, and you end up building your own cash flow plan. So great one to go to. The second one is business planning strategies, which is really There's so much information out there at the moment, and the business planning strategies helps you identify the programs that are out there that can best meet your business's needs. So another really good one, and there are I think there's training sessions coming up on the 8th and 12th of May, and that's really very tailored to the Gold Coast. So look out for that one, business planning strategies. Thirdly, there's a mentoring panel discussion, and this one's on the 11th of May, and there's a whole number of industry professionals that come along and pretty much offer suggestions on how you can run your business a little differently into the future. We also, well, the Department of Employment and Small Business and Training, so DESBIT, they have a really fabulous program called Mentoring for Growth, and you can access free volunteer business experts who can provide a whole range of insights and suggestions on how you might build or change your business. They have about 50 mentors that are available, and they can provide really tailored support and financial management and business planning. So really look into those. For individuals and for business owners as well, it really is such an important time to reflect on the skills that you'll need, not only today, but into the future. And to reflect on your career, and building as much as possible really transferable skills is really critical. So TAFE Queensland has 6 micro-credentials that's open to everybody, and they have everything from digital literacy skills through to data analysis. Now those two, the digital literacy and the data analysis, have been immensely popular, and not surprisingly, because I think people are realising these are just absolute essential for any business. So once you actually have completed that micro-credential, you're issued with a digital badge, and it weighs some credibility to that specific area or to your business. So it's free, that micro-credential, it's 100% delivered online, and it's all self-directed. It takes about an hour, and you can just do one module at a time. We also have 9 skill sets. So these are units of competency, and these are really trying to target those people that have been negatively impacted by COVID-19. And so it's a great way, again, to quickly build on your skill set. So you're not having to do a whole qualification, you can just focus on getting a specific skill set up. Now on the Gold Coast, we're really promoting the health service support skill set, because it's focused on giving people those necessary skills that'll support them move into a whole range of options in the health field. And of all the areas that will do particularly well post COVID-19, health is going to be one of them, and particularly on the Gold Coast. So really encouraging anyone that's working NDIS, aged care, volunteering, anything to do with human services, you're nuts not to be doing one of those skill sets, but specifically the health services support skill set. Later this week, we're going to have an announcement by the Minister, and this is a huge one, where she's going to be announcing recognition of prior skills. So an RPL is going to be available at a very inexpensive price. And this is, for people that have been working in industry for many years, and they have all the relevant skills, but they don't have the qualification. That's what an RPL process can do. It can look at your wealth of training and experience and volunteer work, and it can give you a qualification without the enormous price tag that often comes with doing a full course. So look out for that. Apprentices, the federal government has a range of incentives out there at the moment to support apprentices or support businesses take on an apprentice. So you can get a wage subsidy of up to 50%. And we also, if you're having to lay off apprentices, we can help. So again, contact us if you are thinking you want an apprentice, or you are not able to keep that apprentice. Do speak to us so we can support that person transition into something else. We also have a career information available. There's a particular tool you can complete, which is called Discover Your Career. It's fairly inexpensive, and it provides you with a really comprehensive career report. And I think it's important for people that are thinking about a change of career, possibly to go and complete that particular tool. So all of this information can be accessed on the TAFE Queensland website under ISOLearn, ISOLEARN. We also have our COVID-19 response officer, Bridget Gray, who's online today, and she's fantastic. So if you have any queries, please contact Bridget. We're going to make her details available, and please contact her and she will be able to help you out. So in terms of, you know, future program, what's the future hold for TAFE Queensland? Well, as Tyrone said, we're probably looking at some of our strengths at the moment, and we're looking at some of our business model and going, you know, is it what's working for us? What do we need to change? And there's lots of really positive things that are flowing from this for TAFE Queensland. You know, what we do know is that, you know, where people will work from into the future will be different. Our staff, you know, we've got a lot of people who are working from home, working very productively, and it's a win-win situation. So we'll be looking at how, you know, where people work from and how they work into the future. Our online training, areas, like I said to Marshall before, where we didn't anticipate we'd have such success, like in the trades, and we're doing very well and the students are highly engaged. So we'll be looking to ways that we can leverage that into the future. And I mean, we'll always have mixed modes, so there'll always be that practical hands-on element. We'll be looking at ways that we can leverage that. The other area is a lot of our service delivery, like, you know, the counselling and library services and customer service. We've transferred a lot of that to an online medium, and that's also working well. So we'll be looking at ways that we can really meet our customers' needs, but through those more flexible options. I mentioned it earlier, transferable skills. So we need to build a workforce into the future that is able to, with some agility, move from one career to another. And so I think we're going to be really focused on developing that into the future. So building students with skills that are going to be transferable. So if they're working in health, they can be transferable over to a hospitality area. So building some fundamental skills for everybody. Lifelong learning, we've been talking about it forever, but it'll grow into the future. There'll be a much stronger emphasis on, you know, shorter courses, greater flexibility in how we do our delivery, including after hours delivery, and much more workplace delivery. And in terms of small to medium-sized businesses and where we see some opportunities out there in the future, we think there's going to be, you know, this is probably in the next sort of 2 to 6 months, great focus on building entrepreneurship and innovation, interview skills. How we interview into the future is going to change. So building those skills in individuals going for jobs and building interview skills for the employer, building those skills to be able to assess people and the suitability for jobs in the workplace. We think that's an area that's going to change as well. Business continuity planning is going to be really important moving through into the future. And finally, an area that, in no doubt in my mind, is going to be huge is going to be infection control. And already we have quite a lot of demand for infection control. And I think that that will become, we'll see it more evident in our workplace. And it won't be, it'll be sort of a legacy, I guess, of COVID-19. We will be very different in the way we manage infection control in our workplaces into the future. So that's me done. Back to you, Marshall.
Thank you, Karen. I'll just, if anyone's got any questions, can you post them in the chat box on the right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner. Now, first one's for Alfred, I think. I mean, a lot of sectors are hurting. How's the education sector doing as a whole? I mean, are the numbers looking good for the future?
So as a whole, Marshall, the education sector around Australia is really hurting, right? The numbers for us have halved on the Gold Coast. At the end of 2019, we had over 35,000 international students studying on the coast, and the education sector was going from strength to strength. Including just last year, we increased the numbers by 3,300 international students. So there was lots of collaboration, lots of advocacy happening at all different levels, and our voice is really being heard. But that's, I guess, we're not alone. The whole world is going through the same crisis. I will say that as far as coming back from this, the Gold Coast and in particular Australia have managed the crisis really well from an infection point of view. So our, I guess, key attributes are we're safe, we've got job opportunities, you know, we support international students. And if you look at that combined with our major competitors, say the UK and the US, which are #1 and #2 in terms of student choice, we've actually fared really well as a safe destination. So provided that we don't have another outbreak or something happen in terms of the disease itself, we should fare relatively well in our recovery plans as a study destination. I will say, you know, my colleagues touched on a couple of the programs, and there's many other programs that our providers are offering, including the likes of unique programs like blockchain, that, you know, isn't being delivered online anywhere else in the world. So that's pretty unique to us here on the Gold Coast. And there's a whole suite of other programs that all the providers, including, you know, Bond University's now delivering remote learning, Griffith University has a whole suite, including, you know, they're working vigorously on a vaccine through the Institute of Glycomics and trialing drugs that are already available to see what their response is. So to sum it up, I think, you know, if I was going to be anywhere else in the world, I'd be more concerned. Now, that might sound a little bit Pollyanna, but I think we've got to be optimistic and have a proactive approach to coming back from this thing.
Okay, question for Tyrone. If restrictions are eased to allow universities to deliver face-to-face learning, would you still continue with online, or could certain activities be done face-to-face?
Yeah, look, great question. And I'll just jump in and answer another one that relates to something I said before, which is about credit. Someone's asked the question as to whether the short courses carry credit into university degrees. The answer is yes, absolutely. They're designed to carry full credit. So effectively, it ends up being a semester's worth in the traditional measure. Yeah, so look, before COVID, we were offering a lot of education online as well as face-to-face. So we were one of those institutions which did both, and did both in broadly equal measure, actually. For us, we have learnt how to do certain things online that we would never have imagined doing online. And a lot of those things will revert back to that more face-to-face environment in due course. But I think what we will do post-COVID is definitely leverage the online environment differently and to a greater extent than we have before. But one of the really core attributes of our educational offerings is community building, skills you know, the skills component, that really tangible hands-on element. And you kind of need to be using the face-to-face domain to do some of that. Just so that people understand, we're doing a lot of risk planning at the moment so we have disciplines where candidates cannot graduate unless they do certain things that cannot be done online. Think of some of the health disciplines where, you know, a nursing student needs to learn how to do physical manipulations of the body and so on. So we're doing a lot of risk planning about how we can do some of that work progressively over the rest of the year. For the moment, that's being treated as an exceptions basis where it's necessary to do so. But again, I think some of the lessons we learn in terms of risk management, social distancing in the context of doing that kind of work will be transferable to the broader sort of community. So a bit of both. We do both. We will do both. But the balance between those things might change over time. Is my answer, Marshall.
Thank you. Karen, what do you think the completion rates will be from those who are enrolling in the discounted vet courses?
We'll get reasonably good completion rates because people that are going to be completing those, you know, the micro-credentials and the skill sets are highly motivated to do so. These are, you know, I guess people already have high levels of digital literacy. They're already highly motivated to be studying those specific areas. So we anticipate, the completion rates to be very high. It's not like, you know, and they're short, sharp, you know, it's highly engaging, the mediums that they're using, you know, the completion rates will be high. Plus people are really, a lot of people using the micro-credentials that are just 1 hour. They're going in and they're actually going through all the micro-credentials. You can do one at a time, and it doesn't take you, there's 6 up there, it doesn't take you too long to get through them. And you get all the digital badging that goes with that. It looks pretty nice on the CV. So, you know, I guess people understand, and I guess after, when we sort of rebound from, you know, COVID-19 and businesses start opening again, you know, employers will start to look for these sorts of skills in people's CVs. So, you know, people are highly motivated, completion rates will be good.
What, for all three of you, what's the sector doing for, towards the welfare of your students, particularly those international students who are trapped, so to speak?
Can I, I'll go first, because yeah. I guess, and Alfred will speak, spends a lot of time, I know Study Gold Coast has done a whole lot of fabulous things in terms of supporting international students, but for us it's been one of those areas of greatest need, where we had, I mean, a lot of the international students don't have access to some of the JobKeeper, for example. So we've found ways to be able to support international students. One of the ways that we're doing that is through a food drive. And so we started off with staff asking them to make donations, and that was quite successful. And then we had a lot of people in the community that started to make those donations as well. So now we've got community support and, you know, local business support, people dropping off food that we can then distribute to international students. So that's one way. There's a few other little things that we've done, but we've really had our eye on our international students, because they're a long way from home. They don't have the same support network that our domestic students would have here. And I guess we have worked as a whole of sector, and Tyrone and Alfred both speak to this, really focused on really supporting those international students a long way from home.
I'm happy to sort of give a Southern Cross perspective on this. So look, this is a huge issue, and to be honest, it's one of those areas where we might have hoped perhaps for a sort of a different form of leadership from Canberra. Although it is very, very pleasing that states like Queensland have started to step up and take some responsibility for this. To us, this has been one of the burning platform issues from the get-go. We realise our responsibilities to these students, and we've really tried to get our arms around them. So it's been a whole variety of things. For example, we've made sure that there's been direct contact from our student support teams with every single one of our international students. In some cases, that's meant that we've spoken to them. You know, there have been hundreds of outbound telephone calls made just so that we can touch base. How are you going? What's going on? What are your needs? How can we help you? Those sorts of things. We've beefed up our counselling and support services, anything to do with international student guidance, counselling support. You can imagine that we've had jobs at the university that, as a result of being in an online environment without students on campus, haven't been quite so busy. So we've diverted a lot of resources into teams that are looking at student welfare and support. And that's been really, that's been something that our staff have been really wanting to do. We've also spent cash. So we've invested more than $500,000 thus far in emergency financial relief to our students, and we're monitoring whether we need to increase that. And this is, you know, we've had some students who basically, you know, to Karen's point about food, have had difficulty with groceries or have had difficulty with the rent. The other thing that we've noticed a little bit of is the need for students to have advocacy from us when it comes to dealing with landlords in some cases. So early on in this crisis, and this was very patchy. So you know, it's not as if this was a groundswell, but we did have instances where homestay parents, for example, became very uncomfortable with having international students at their place of residence, and we had to find alternative accommodation for some of our students. So there's been a lot of things going on, but in the end, lots of contact, lots of engagement, diverting staff resources so that we've got more people on the ground directed to this, and where necessary, cash support for students so that they can continue to, to keep up with the necessities of life. Also looking at scholarship packages for students into the future. So it's a really important question, Marshall. I'm glad you asked this.
All right, you want me to take over there, Marshall? So from a Study Gold Coast standpoint, we have worked, the team has worked tirelessly on this as an approach. We took a bit of a three-tiered approach. So firstly, we funded 15 projects citywide through the providers as their first point of contact. That is enabling, I guess, support for 5,000 odd students within the city. Deloitte's did a piece of work, and we know that at risk there's about 3,000 students in the city that could be at risk of falling into hardship. The second stage will be, we're going to, as we reopen the hub in Southport, we're looking to provide a bit of a student pantry, some packs for students that might not be at hardship, but they're just struggling on their day-to-day, and we can support them with that. And we're just working with the state in getting some funding to support that. And then the third stage for us is we've been working with the city about how do we get these students back to work. You know, part-time jobs is important to students. And as my colleagues touched on, there's lots of support that has gone in from a provider perspective as well as a city perspective through Study Gold Coast. But getting them back to work is the ultimate, and the quicker we can do that, the better. You know, students are resourceful, and they'll do what they can. Sleep on a couch, and they will do what they can to get by. However, the sooner we get back to business and back to business as usual, and getting the coffee shops open and all the the food and accommodation providers back open and back operational, that provides a whole suite of part-time and casual jobs to support students, whether they're domestic or international. So we've been feeding into a few working groups with the city as well as the federal government locally to try and get stimulus packages up as quick as possible to support those students and get them back to business. So that's just touching on a few of the support programs that we have at Study Gold Coast. Our student hub has gone virtual, and we've also been providing student hangouts. That social element where when students are quarantined, that social part of it is important, and we've seen a great uptake. Over 500 students tapping into those social hangouts. So yeah, there's been a lot of work put into this, Marshall.
Now, what does coming out of this post COVID-19? Just before, the education sector in the on the Gold Coast was absolutely killing it before post COVID-19, and it's a really important part of our economy. What do we need coming out to get us back there and get the growth happening again?
I'll let Tyrone start. I'll finish off this one, Tyrone.
Marshall, it's a holistic thing because universities and TAFEs, education providers, are part of a community, and we sort of prosper or not in large part on the basis of the health of the sort of ecosystem of which we are a part.
Mm-hmm.
I think if as we come to the other side of this, one of the things that we can do on the Gold Coast is accomplish a greater degree of integration between the work that we do in the context of providing education and the work that's going on in the various industries that comprise the coast. That will be a very good thing, and that will be something that that is very attractive, something that we can work with. There's some basic infrastructure things. We've got to get the airports up, open, and working again too. But equally, I think this is not just about international students, as important as they are. It's also about how we use our resources to attract students to come to the coast from other parts of Australia as well. And that's where I think the online side of what we're doing is quite interesting, because whilst we can deliver some really, really important learning online, what we can do is back that up with the sort of experiential type of learning that you could only do in situ. And I think we'll be thinking a lot harder about how we can leverage the destination and place, not just in terms of its iconic iconic position when people outside of Australia think about Australia, but also more so within Australia. So yeah, I think that integration with the broader community and industry, we can do better with that. Every institution has its own particular issues. Obviously, for us at Coolangatta, we've got some really interesting challenges in terms of infrastructure. I think everyone's well aware of those things. And I think also for us, what's going to be really important is working closer and closer with Karen, to be honest, and TAFE Queensland, because I think that partnership is only just beginning, and we see that to be incredibly strategic and a good thing, and we think we can put a really, really good model together on the coast. So those are some thoughts.
Okay, Alfred or Karen, do you want to take it over?
Alf, do you want to go?
Yes, so I guess I agree with everything Tyrone said. I get the education sector on the coast traditionally has worked really well in supporting each other and coming together and collaborating. We see that through Study Gold Coast and having a voice at a national level as well as an international level. What do we need to get out of this thing? We need good, strong collaboration with industry, both external industry as well as internal industry. We need all levels of government to come together to support us cohesively, I guess, and not sporadically. And I think most of all, we need to get the industries just back online and supported through key strategic initiatives. So whatever stimulus packages are out there, we need to leverage those and amplify those as much as we can. And that'll see us do well in the short term to long term.
I mean, I completely agree with what Tyrone and Alfred said, and very much, you know, whatever happens in our economy is going to be reflected in what's happening with the training and education side of things as well. So, very much focused on, you know, supporting recovery of our businesses, so that obviously there are jobs are required, and you know, we build up these reskill our workforce into the future. I guess internally. We are needing to make sure that we've got the right strategies in place into the future. So, I think that's an important piece of work, like any business will be reflecting on that, to make sure. So as I said before, maybe strengthening some of our online products, working in collaboration is going to be absolutely key into the future, as Tyrone touched on. And for us, that's in that school space, really tightening up those relationships with schools, and at the higher ed end with the Southern Cross University, really trying to better connect that whole pathway of study. What else was there I wanted to touch on? Oh, the markets. So, what we do know is that things that have been traditionally strong on the Gold Coast, so, hospitality and tourism and events and so forth, now they're going to, and even construction, the short term, it's just going to probably be a little bit weak, but I reckon it's going to come back strong enough. But some of those areas that'll go very strongly right now is healthcare and social services, so the demand, and already that's reflected in our student numbers. Those numbers have not dropped off, and students and obviously prospective students are looking at where those opportunities are. So we'll be aiming to build and be providing lots of education and where the jobs are, and particularly in that healthcare, social science area, but also, nurturing some of those other areas like hospitality that are going to take a little longer to recover.
That's an interesting point, Karen. I was actually going to ask whether any sectors of areas of education which are getting a lot more interest as a result of COVID-19. So I would have thought digital would have been an area.
Huge, absolutely. As I said before, the digital literacy and, again, Angie Bell said the other day, which I thought was extraordinary, the 57% of small businesses don't have an online presence. That has got to change, and it doesn't matter who you are in business, you have got to have an online presence. So supporting businesses build that capacity, that's absolutely, we've got our eyes on that, building that literacy, and also using data better to inform some of the decision making. I know we've been talking about that for years, but like now, like never before, using data to inform how you shape and deliver your business is critical.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I will call a halt to the proceedings. I want to thank Alfred, Tyrone and Karen. Karen was a very active member of the Chamber, and I want to thank her not just for today, but for all her efforts over in the past few years.
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for attending, and I look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Thanks,
Thanks
Marshall.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
That was
Marshall.
great. Thanks,
Everybody.
guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.